Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. I ask Allah to make this a beneficial sitting where we are learning about one of the pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, when he began calling people to Islam, he was one of those very few people who used to go out to the Kaaba and worship Allah openly. And this was to symbolize, should I say, the Tawheed that he is calling to of Allah in worship, Jalla wa Ala. So from the very beginning of the call of Islam, the Kaaba had that focal point, which was, it was created, and even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was a symbol of Tawheed. When the Muslims had some power in Makkah, when they started to gain some momentum, Umar radiallahu anhu said that we need to start with an open da'wah. Why are we being so quiet? Why are we being so reserved and shy about our religion? So what he called for is that the believers go out and they make tawaf around the Kaaba openly. And again, this was to signify the Tawheed of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And then when the Prophet ﷺ moved to al-Madinah, and then when he came to Medina and they settled in al-Madinah, again the companions and the Prophet ﷺ were suggesting we need to go back to Mecca. So in the 6th year after Hijrah, they made a travel to make Umrah, and that's where they got stopped in the famous Treaty of Hudaybiyah. With him, he had 1,500 companions. And with that travel, they were prevented, and we can learn from the ahkam of Hajj from there as well. The person was prevented from entering into the Haram after he's assumed the Ihram. He's known as a Muhsir, and the ahkam connected to that also. But what we also learn from the event of Hudaybiyah, the ulama have said that Bay'at al-Ridwan happened at that time. لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Allah is pleased with every single one. So one of the things that we gained from that particular trip to the Haram of Allah Jalla wa Ala is that those 1,500 people were pure. There was no nifaq, there was no kufr, there was no shirk, there was not going to be any ridda from any of them. All of them had attained the pleasure of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Just 2 years later, the Prophet ﷺ went back to liberate Makkah in the Fath of Makkah. In Hudaybiyah he had 1,500, and now he had 10,000 people with him. Again, going to Makkah. Again, the symbolism of Tawheed and the importance of how Islam connects its message of Tawheed to the house of Allah in Makkah. Then just 2 years after that, 10 years after his hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ finally made Hajj, and he had 100,000 companions with him. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just 10 years ago, there were a few handful, hundreds. In 10 years, their focus on Tawheed, their focus on Iman, that converted into 100,000. Just 10 years. So this level of importance has then been carried out after the companions, after the Salaf of this Ummah, by the ulama of Islam. And this momentum continued, this ritual continued, this tradition continued with the ulama of Islam, writing books about the rituals of Hajj and Umrah. Some of those books are small, some of them quite big, some of them are in between. But what we have here is a book that was written by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah about 800 years ago. And books are still written today. I mean, if you go to perform Hajj and Umrah, they will give you books from contemporary scholars. So that is clearly showing that every single century, the ulama have given Hajj and Umrah a great deal of importance. The Kaaba and this set of rituals is very much intertwined, and therefore it becomes one of the pillars of Islam. But this book particularly is a book by Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Now some of the ulama have said that this book was written when Ibn Taymiyyah was very early in his teaching. Therefore, a lot of what he has mentioned in here is following the way of the Hanabila, the Hanbali madhab. Therefore, it's not a true representation of all of his views. That's what some of the ulama have said. Some of the ulama have said that it is, and this was his opinion, and this is his fiqh from the manasik of Hajj and Umrah. Whatever the case, it is a very good book. It is a very basic book. It is a very concise book. And I think this particular book in English is very good. The reason why is because if you flip through the pages, I'm sure you can see at the top, we have a black line that's running out. And the writing on top of it, the font is bigger, and the writing underneath it, the font is smaller. The writing at the top is from Ibn Taymiyyah's book itself. And the writing at the bottom is the explanation given by our Sheikh Saad al-Shithbi, Hafidhahullah. The writing at the top is very basic and easy for a person to follow. If he just wants to know, right, what do I need to do on this day and that day, where do I go, how do I do this and how do I do that, Ibn Taymiyyah explains that very clearly. If a person wants more detail, then they can refer to the explanation given underneath the line. Now, why is that important? The reason why I say that is important is because, number one, something like this, to the best of my knowledge, has not been released in the English language. But more importantly, because we are studying something about fiqh here, the ulama have said that if you want to start studying about a fiqh madhab, about a fiqh of anything, salat, siyam, anything, hajj, you need to stick to a simple text of the madhab. Whether it's a Hanafi madhab, whether it's a Shafi madhab, whether it's you need to stick to a particular madhab. And then when you grow, that's when you can then expand and then think, okay, well, there are different views, there are different opinions. This is what a lot of the ulama have said. In the process of learning, that's what you should do. Because if you go to straight to the hadith, for example, or you go to a book which has difference of opinions, then you can get confused. And especially if you're going to different teachers, one teacher might say something and another one might say something else, and that will then cause confusion or cause you to ignore what some people say and focus on what other people say. Therefore, the ulama have said, the best way that you can create malaka in fiqh, that you can create independence and a good firm foundation in fiqh, is that you study a text from the madhab. There is no harm in that. Nobody is saying that you make taqleed of that madhab. Let's draw a distinction here. Let's study the madhab, but study in a way that we will not end up following it blindly. Some of the ulama have said that the best way, especially today, is to find a teacher, and then that teacher will be able to give you the details of the fiqh, and he'll be able to explain the khilaf, and he'll be able to explain that, look, these are your options. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 madhabs. Every single madhab says something like this, it says something different. I think particularly that this one is stronger, and then you can have that conversation with the sheikh. So there's two ways of studying fiqh. Where you study the madhab, and then you let it grow, but that takes time. Not that the other one doesn't take time, but the other one exposes you right away, and the teacher is able to guide you. And this is personal advice that I've taken from Sheikh Saad al-Shithbi, and our Sheikh Saad al-Fawzan reiterated a lot in this particular way in his durus, that you shouldn't really follow a madhab, because then you won't know what is right and wrong. Stick to a teacher and let that teacher guide you, if you have that available. If not, then stick to the text of a madhab. What this method then creates is it actually creates fiqh, and it actually creates ilm. And it doesn't create taqleed and ta'assub. Taqleed is when people blindly follow. And ta'assub will say, this is my opinion and I don't care what anybody else says. This is my opinion, this is the right one, and everybody else is wrong. They don't want to have any discussion as to why or which one is right, which one is wrong. When a person has the engagement with books like this particularly as well, where you have something which is general, and then the detail is explained to you, and the difference of opinions are explained to you, and then the sheikh gives you the correct opinion, that way you know that there are other interpretations out there, but I think this one is better, at least for now, but I can tolerate other views. Therefore, you won't end up taqleed, you won't end up making taqleed of one particular view, because you know there are other views. You won't end up being firm in one view and disrespecting anything else you don't understand or never seen before. And also what it creates is it creates fiqh and it creates ilm in that person. Because he realizes and he is sensible in the way that he approaches fiqh. and the difference of opinions that are in there. So this is a good example of how fiqh should be taught. And the Shaykh in the beginning, on page 15, in the introduction, he begins with the Khutbatul Hajj. And in the first paragraph after he begins the introduction, this is the introduction from Shaykh Salih Shifri, who explained the book. He makes a very important point, which is that if anyone that wants to study or do any kind of action in Islam, there are two things that he needs before he starts doing that. Number one, he needs to have ikhlas, and number two, he needs to have ilm. He needs to have ikhlas, and he needs to have ilm. Because without this, it may be that he is not rewarded, but more importantly, what he seeks in ilm will not benefit that person. And the Shaykh says, and from the extremely important points is that one performing the Hajj or the Umrah has the feeling that they are living their lives worshipping Allah in all the deeds that they do, and even more so whilst doing the Hajj and other rituals when going to Mecca and Medina. So the person's sleep, their eating, their conversation, their engaging with other people, the rituals they perform, all of these are examples of things that they will end up doing for the sake of Allah, and therefore becoming an act of worship. Before you do anything, ilm and ikhlas are two very important aspects of seeking to become better. When a person does that, it will impact him and it will benefit him, and it will have an impact on his life, and it will help him become a better person and change his life. On page 16, the Shaykh carries on. He talks about the Hajj in particular. He says that the Hajj actually begins now. If anybody is going Hajj this year and they are listening to this talk, or any other talk for that matter, the Hajj has already begun for them, as the Shaykh is saying here. The pilgrim must preserve their time so they may understand the intent behind the Hajj and its rulings, and thus limiting himself from falling into what has been prohibited, so that he may attain the pleasure of Allah. And then the Shaykh continues. What he's saying is that the Hajj actually begins now, because this ilm and ikhlas that he talked about on the other page has already begun for him. The whole reason why he is sitting here and studying is with ilm and ikhlas, or to seek ilm and with ikhlas. And what he says at the end of his introduction is that there is also another important ingredient, which is tawbah. So through ilm and through tawbah, a person will be then able to increase and take away those things which could prevent him from benefiting. And he gives examples of it. How many people have performed Hajj and they wasted their time? How many people have performed Hajj and it didn't affect them in their lives? All of that is because the ilm and the ikhlas and the tawbah was lacking. And wallahi, I'm sure you know people. I've met people myself who said that we're going to Hajj so we can get it out the way. You've seen that before? I've seen that before. I'm young, I've got the money. Before it gets too expensive, let me get it out of the way, so that the Wajib is being fulfilled. Wallah understand. So there are people like that. Page 20, this is the beginning of the book. The Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah talks about the definition of Hajj, its rulings, and regarding one's ability in carrying it out. And then he gives a definition as to what Hajj is and where it comes from. And the Shaykh says that it comes from Hajj and Hijj. It means to intend to do something. And he goes into explaining ishtiqaq al-akhbar, and that is basically an etymology in Arabic, where you have Hajj and then it becomes Hijj, and then how you can Hajj, and all those things that can change, which feed into the definition of the word as to what it actually is. But the Shaykh at the bottom here has saying that everything, before we say what he said, everything needs a definition. And this is very important. So what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is doing here is very important, because everything needs a definition. Because sometimes somebody could be talking about one thing, in actual fact, that thing that he's talking about is not falling into the definition of that thing he's talking about. An example of that has actually happened with myself. One time I was talking to Sheikh Salih al-Haydan about da'wah. And we started talking about some of the narrations of the Salaf, and he corrected me, and he said, listen, what you are now talking about is durus. Da'wah, durus, lessons, enjoining good, forbidding evil, all of these are different realms, and they have different conditions, and and attitudes and conditions and wisdoms and approaches. But now you will see, if you just go into YouTube or Google or wherever, you will see da'wah being put into the same realm as teaching, put in the same realm as enjoining good and forbidding evil, when they're all different things. They all have different definitions. Therefore, definitions are very, very important. And like the Shaykh says at the bottom here, Ibn Taymiyyah is talking about the definition of Hajj. However, Hajj is quite obvious. It's to intend to go to the house to perform the rituals. So what we can learn from this is that there is an approach by Ibn Taymiyyah and then there's an approach by Shaykh Sa'd. What we can learn from this, if we just take a step back, we can see that some things need a definition, like we've just given an example for, but some things don't need a definition. Some things are quite plain and clear. However, that doesn't negate the importance of seeking the definition to make sure that you know what you are talking about. You know the actual topic that we are talking about and what that topic actually is. That's the linguistic definition of what Hajj is. Then on page 21, he goes on to talk about the legislative or the definition of Hajj in the Sharia. And again, it's more or less the same thing when you say that people go to the house and perform Hajj, etc. So I mean, there isn't anything much that can be discussed here. However, there is an important point that comes from this, which is, from what the Shaykh has mentioned here, from the definition of Hajj, there has come at least 2 or 3 different ahkam and khilaf in the rulings of and the fiqh of the Hajj itself. Let me give you an example. The Shaykh is saying here, the use of the word Hajj was overtaken by the Sharia and its customary meaning, which is to make pilgrimage to the house of Allah. Thus it is not understood in an absolute sense except by this specific kind of intention. Because this is what has been legislated in many places in the Quran, such as the statement of Allah, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ وَأَتِمُّوا بِالْحَجِّ, etc. What we can gain from this is, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is saying here that the Sharia has given a definition of Hajj. From this, we have some ahkam that come out from it. And this is again showing you the importance of of defining something. So now, an example of this on page 21. The ulama have differed. If a person goes for Hajj and he never says one single word, not one single word, not one takbir, not one tahleel, he goes to the ihram, he's done all of the actions, put the ihram on, goes to Makkah, does tawaf, does sa'i, goes Mina, Arafah, Muzdalifah, etc., does the pelting, not said one single word, is Hajj accepted or not? Khilaf has come from this because some of them have said they are rituals and that is sufficient. Some of them have said no, it is rituals and statements, and this is the point. This is the opinion of the Hanafis. Whereas the majority of the ulama have said, if a person was to perform a non-verbal Hajj, then the Hajj will be sahih because he has done all the rituals. Because the definition is the Hajj is to go to the house and perform the rituals. Right. Another example of what comes from this, and this is now another fiqhi opinion or another fiqhi issue, so to speak. If a person goes to Hajj and she is on her menses or he is in janaba, is he allowed to make dhikr and recite the Quran? The definition here is to go to Hajj and make the rituals. Some of the ulama have said part of the rituals include making dhikr in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ permitted the menstruating woman to make Hajj except make tawaf. But she can make dhikr in Quran. Therefore, there is proof in this that a woman in her menstruation can recite the Quran from the Mus'haf. You see why definition is important? What do you mean? From the book, yeah. Some of them have that opinion, yeah. Because of this. Because the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha radiallahu anha, If'ali ma yaf'al al-Hajj. Do everything that the Haji does. Everything. So yeah, they're making dhikr, they're reciting Quran, they're making dua. So the Prophet ﷺ was given a permission. Therefore, definitions are very important. Now we've just taken 2 particular issues which are quite reoccurring. People ask these questions sometimes, and these are some of the things that the ulama mentioned in the books of it. But I'm sure if you were to look deeper, you could probably find more issues that come from just the definition. That's why definitions are very important. Whatever the case, on page 21, the Shaykh is saying here, the definition of Hajj is for a person to have the intention and go and perform the rituals, and he gives examples of them on page 21 and page 22. Page 23, the ruling of the Hajj and the Umrah. The Shaykh begins. The Hajj is an overall obligation on the Muslim. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and a detailed subject. The obligation is found in the ayah, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ السَّبِيلَ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. And the Shaykh said that this is actually one part of one ayah. This is found in Al-Imran, ayah number 97. And the ulama have said is that this one statement, we find the Hajj becoming an obligation, and in the last part of the ayah becoming a pillar. How so? Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ. For upon mankind is that they need to make Hajj to the house of Allah. Therefore it's become an obligation. مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. Now we have fiqh and ahkam come from that, for those people who are able. And the Shaykh then will follow on with the same order of the ayah here, in the way that he has authored his book. So now he's talking about what Hajj is, he's talking about the obligation, then he will talk about the ability, then he will talk about the ahkam. But in the last part of the ayah, وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ, Allah is saying that if you reject the Hajj and you don't do the Hajj, then Allah is not in any need of the alameen, the mankind and the jinn. And from this the ulama have taken that this is the ayah, or part of the ayah, where Hajj becomes a pillar. So just from one line, we gain the ruling, we gain some of the ahkam, and we gain the understanding that the Hajj is also a pillar of Islam. Hassan? You don't have a question? Okay, that's good. So the Shaykh saying here, Shaykh said at the bottom, Hafidhullah, is that if something is important, and this is around about what he's saying on the footnote on page 23, page 24. I mean, alhamdulillah, we've got 3 copies of the book. You can read it in your own time. We don't have enough time, unfortunately, to go through the whole book and read it in detail. In actual fact, when the Shaykh explained this book, he explained it over a duration of a week, every day, different dose. And we're trying to cram it in between 8 and Salatul Isha. So we'll try our best. But what the Shaykh is saying here is that if something is important, what this ayah is teaching us, one of the things that we can learn from this ayah is that if something is important, a person must need to take it seriously, and a person must learn before going out and doing that action. This is a summary of what Hajj is and the ruling of the Hajj. We've talked about Hajj is going to the house of Allah, performing rituals. What is the ruling of the Hajj is that it is obligatory in actual for those people who are able, and it's a pillar of Islam. On page 25, the Shaykh then goes on to talk about the ruling on Umrah. Because on this has hikmah in itself, because the scholars have differed on the ruling of the Umrah itself. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said the Umrah is obligatory for a person to perform it at least once in his life. Because Allah is saying in this ayah, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ السَّبِيلَ. What we can learn from this is that mankind must perform Hajj at least once in their life. Included in that is Umrah, because you've got different types of Hajj, and we're going to talk about that. Others from the ulama have said that in this ayah there is no mentioning of Umrah. There is no mentioning of Umrah. Therefore, Umrah is not Wajib. And this is the opinion of the Hanafis and the Malikis. And this is another good thing that we can learn from this book, like we said in the introduction, is that the Shaykh, whenever there is a difference of opinion, he'll give you the difference of opinion, and he'll then explain what the difference is and why there is a difference and what the correct opinion is. So because there is no mention of the word Umrah in this ayah, the Hanafis and the Malikis have said that Hajj is not Wajib. Umrah is not Wajib. Whereas Ahmad has said that Hajj and Umrah is Wajib. On page 26, Imam Shafi holds that opinion also. And the dalil is there also from the hadith of Sabi ibn Ma'bad, who said to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, verily I see the Hajj and the Umrah as being 2 obligatory actions of worship in the Book of Allah. And this is proof. And the Shaykh goes on to talk about different proofs to suggest and to affirm, and the dalil to affirm that Umrah is Wajib. So now we have a misconception with some people, which is that they think that Hajj alone is Wajib for a person to do at least once in their life. According to the correct opinion, as we can see here, Also Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْأُمْرَ لِلَّهِ. Complete the Hajj and the Umrah for the sake of Allah. Therefore, it has become a wajib. And this is, like I said, a misconception with some people, unfortunately, which is that they think that all they need to do is perform Hajj once in their life. Now, the correct opinion with this, according to those scholars, even those scholars who say that it is wajib, are saying that if a person performs the tamattu kind or the qiran kind, where it combines Hajj with Umrah, then he has fulfilled that obligation. He has fulfilled that obligation. But sometimes a person might be negligent on this. If they go, and it is possible for a person to travel and do ifrad kind of Hajj, and never make Umrah for the rest of his life, thinking that he has done what is obligatory upon him. The Shaykh on page 27 says, Hajj and Umrah are both rituals which the legislation has made an obligation for one to perform at least once in their lifetime. So what we can learn from this is that a person must perform Hajj and Umrah once in a. So now we've talked about what Hajj and Umrah is, and we've talked about the ruling. However, when does a person perform Hajj and Umrah? So now there is khilaf on this also. Some of the ulama have said that a person is allowed to delay the Hajj and Umrah, and he can do it whenever it's convenient for him. So if he is rich now, and he's never done Hajj in his life, he is rich now and he can go for Hajj now, he can do it next year, there's no problem. And this is the opinion of the Shafi'is. And what they used as proof is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Hajj was obligated and made a pillar of Islam in the 9th year of Hijrah, after Hijrah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made Hajj in what year? The 10th year. So the Shafi'is have said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam delayed, therefore you are allowed to delay. But the majority of the ulama have said is that, and this is what the Shaykh is saying here also, that the majority of the ulama have said that when a person is able and he has fulfilled all the conditions for ability, he must go as soon as he is able. And this is the correct view, as the Shaykh is saying. And the way that we can respond to what the Shafi'is have said is that the Prophet ﷺ was delayed for a valid reason. And in actual fact, this is proof to say that if you are delayed for a valid reason, then there is no harm upon you. However, if there is no delay, if there is no obstruction, then you must go. On page 28 now, the Shaykh begins to talk about the conditions. So remember the ayah. What does the ayah say? وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ الْحِجْ. What is Hajj? What is the ruling on Hajj? The Shaykh talked about that. مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ. For those people who are able, the Shaykh now is talking about ability. So now on page 28, number 1, Islam. The condition for a person to make Hajj and Umrah is that he must be a Muslim. And Allah says about this in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ. The mushriks are spiritually impure. فَلَا يَقْرَبُ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ بَعْدَ عَامِهِمْ هَذَا. They are not allowed to perform any rituals to the house after this year. So what we can learn from this is that you have to be a Muslim in order to perform the rituals of Hajj and Umrah. The second condition that he gives is on page 29, is that a person must have his sanity. Another condition that is necessary for the Hajj or the Umrah to be obligatory is that the person must be free from insanity, whereby it is not obligatory upon him until he gains his sanity. Likewise, now there's another khilaf, we're going to talk about that now. Likewise, it is not obligatory upon children until they become adolescent, based on the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam statement, رُفِعَ الْأَقْلَامِ عَلَى الثَّلَاثِ. The pen is lifted upon 3. Now, from this we can learn that you need to be sane in order for Hajj to be wajib. I think that makes common sense, doesn't it? So if a person is in a coma, he's terminally ill, he's got mental illness, there's something wrong with him in his brain or cognitively or awareness, may Allah protect us and cure the Muslimin. If there is an impediment in that manner, then we can't say to him, go make Hajj. However, what we have gained from this, which is a difference of opinion, and which is a very important difference of opinion, which is that, and this is a very important principle that we must understand, and this is something which you will find not just in Hajj, this is an underlying principle with all acts of ibadah, that there are Shuroot al-Wujoob and there are Shuroot al-Ijza. Shuroot al-Wujoob and Shuroot al-Ijza. Shuroot al-Wujoob is that when these conditions are met, it becomes wajib upon you. What's the ruling on us praying Salat al-Maghrib in about half an hour? What's the ruling? As far as the wajib, why? All the conditions are met. We are awake, we have our awrah covered, we've got wudu, we are in the masjid, we're going to face the qibla. The time has begun, all of the conditions. So when the conditions are there, the wajib has been set upon you. This is Shuroot al-Wujoob, where a lot of people think that this is the only thing that I need, but I don't need the other one, which is Shuroot al-Ijza. Now Shuroot al-Ijza is that if a person doesn't fulfill all of the conditions, but he has done some of the conditions which are sufficient for the action to be sahih, then this is Shuroot al-Ijza. So now, for example, what is the ruling on praying Salat al-Maghrib in half an hour upon you? Is it the same as it is upon Abdullah? Why not? He's not baligh, whereas you are baligh. So now it is upon you wajib. Upon him, if he sits at the back, is he going to be sinful? He's not going to be sinful. However, if he prays, Shuroot al-Ijza are there. So therefore, one thing which is missing, where he needs to have for Salah to be wajib upon him, which is the age. But you take that variable out, if he does everything else, is the Salah still acceptable? Yes. Therefore, the Hajj is exactly the same. Siyam is exactly, is he allowed to fast? He's allowed to fast. Is it wajib upon him to fast? No, it is not. So we have Shuroot al-Wujoob and we have Shuroot al-Ijza. And this is a very important distinction that we have. Now, this is a parenting piece of advice and principle also, which is people will think, okay, well, he's young, leave him, he's still learning, and there is still time, and why are you being so harsh? No. The Sharia recognizes Shuroot al-Wujoob, definitely, but it also recognizes Shuroot al-Ijza, and in actual fact promotes Shuroot al-Ijza, so that we can prepare ourselves for the Shuroot al-Wujoob. This is a khilaf between the majority of ulama and the Hanafis. The Hanafis said, if a person is a minor, he cannot perform the Hajj. And you can see here, as for those who state that being an adult is a condition, then those doing the Hajj fall into one of the three categories. Those who have become an adult. Okay, so the Shaykh goes on to talk about another masala, which we will talk about. But there is a group of scholars, the Hanafi madhab, have said that children cannot perform the Hajj. Why? Because they have restricted the Hajj and the Umrah to those people who have Shuroot al-Wujoob, not for Shuroot al-Ijza. But this is not across the board with all acts of worship with the Hanafis. Right. Why is this important? This is also important because a person might go, Abdullah might go to Hajj, and on the day of Arafah, he becomes a man. Is that possible? It's possible. Or a person goes for Hajj, and if you think, okay, now he's falling under the Shuroot al-Ijza, he's got some kind of an illness which has not made it wajib upon him, but he can come with us because the whole family is going, he's got an illness in his head or something, may Allah protect us. But then, all of a sudden, he's drunk some zamzam, someone's done some ruqyah, and he's become sane again. Not possible? Of course it's possible. So the Shaykh is saying here that the Shuroot al-Ijza can transfer itself into Shuroot al-Wujoob as long as it is done before Arafah has left. Before Arafah has left. So a person, for example, can enter into Ihram and not be in the Shuroot al-Wujoob, but still have Shuroot al-Ijza. He could be a minor and he's still wearing the ihram and he's doing the wudu and he's doing the rituals. But will his Hajj be sahih? It will be sahih if he becomes from the Shuroot al-Wujoob on the day of Arafah. Is that clear? Is that too complicated? Is that clear? Yeah? The third condition, page 31, is that a person must be free. Page 31, again, we're talking about now the subheading of ability. Now some of these subheadings have been put in by the translator, so the Shaykh has not mentioned that. However, this is the core difference, because being a Muslim, having your sanity and being free, you will find these three conditions in all acts of worship nearly. However, when it comes to ability, there is specific ability when it comes to Hajj. Therefore, we have a specific chapter or subheading for that. So the Shaykh is saying, as for ability, then one being able to do the Hajj is a condition for being obligatory upon a person. How do we know that? What's the dalil? Man istata'a ilayhi sabila. Whoever is able to do it. However, if one is unable to perform it, I mean the Hajj or the Umrah, it may be that they are still rewarded for doing the Hajj and the Umrah, and that is in the sense that a person will be rewarded due to his intention. But it could be that he is not able, he is physically not able, he is physically restricted, and he can't go. Right. The ulama have differed as to what ability is. Imam Malik said ability refers to physical ability. Imam Malik has said, ability here refers to physical ability. Imam Ahmad and Imam Shafi'i in their madhabs have said it refers to financial ability. Imam Abu Hanifa said it refers to both, financial as well as physical. Now, this is important for us to understand because with that, a person will decide whether he can go for Hajj or not. But what we can learn from this also, and from the things that we can gain from this as a sub-benefit from the Fiqhi benefits, which is that if a person is financially able, but he's not physically able, so say now I'm financially able, I've got £5,000, but physically I can't go there. Is the Hajj Wajib upon me now? Or is not Wajib? Hada khilaf. The Malikis say no, you're not physically able. But Ahmad and Shafi say no, you need to find a proxy. That becomes Wajib upon you now. You need to find someone who's going to take your place and he will perform the Hajj on your behalf and he will go to Makkah. Because you have financial ability. Unless if that person thinks realistically that he's got financial ability but no physical ability, but that physical ability is only temporary, and next year I'll be able to go. In that scenario, he doesn't need to find anyone. However, if he's got the finances and he thinks that he's got some kind of a physical ability that he's not able to perform the Hajj ever, it becomes wajib upon him from now to find someone to do the Hajj on his behalf. The Malikis will say no. The Malikis will say no, you have to wait. You have to wait for your physical ability. And if you think that you have physical ability, you will have the physical ability in the future, then you have to wait. If you have the physical ability but no financial ability, then you need to seek the means to go. And this now becomes wajib upon you. So now you can see the difference of opinion and some of the ahkam that come from it. And again, we don't want to go into it in too much detail, but this is istita'a. Istita'a ability is talking about financial or physical? Financial. And this is why I think some of the ulama, even the contemporaries, and I believe even Sheikh Saad has said that the view of Abu Hanifa actually is probably one of the best views, because Abu Hanifa combines both. You need to be financially and physical, and this gets rid of all the khilaf that the other madhabs are talking about. Rahimahullah jami'. The dalil for this, the Shaykh goes on page 33 talking about the dalil as to what ability is and why it's so important. Allah says in Surah Tawbah, وَلَا عَلَى الَّذِينَ إِذَا مَا أَتَوْكَ لِتَحْمِلْهُمْ قُلْتَ لَا أَجِدُ مَا أَحْمِلُهُمْ عَلَيْهِ تَوَلَّوْا وَأَعْيُنُهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ حَزَنًا. That these people, they will come and they will have financial restrictions, but they will want to go out and they will be weeping and they will not be able to go because they're excused. So the Shaykh is saying here that if a person is able to walk but he doesn't have the finances, then he is excused. This is the opinion of the Hanafis and the Hanbalis and the Shafis. And they're using this as proof, because there are people that used to come to the Messenger of Rasulullah, they were physically able, but they weren't financially able to go on expeditions, and the Prophet ﷺ used to overlook them. But what we can learn from all of this khilaf, without dwelling on it for too long, the bottom bit here, on the bottom of page 33. Also, travelling a long distance involves a huge amount of difficulty. Therefore, our companions, meaning the Hanbali madhab, and this is again an indication as what the Shaykh, the time of life he was in at that time, that we mentioned in the beginning, towards the end, he changed. And he wasn't so lenient. He wasn't so dependent on the Hanbali madhab. Here, he wrote this towards the beginning of his life, where he was more dependent on him. So our companions, meaning in our madhab, describe the traveller as one who travels to Makkah, even if it is a short distance. Meaning, if he lives in Jeddah, if he's able to go, then he must go. So here we learn the hikmah of it, which is that the Sharia doesn't want difficulty for you. If you are able to go, you are physically able to go, you are financially able to go, then you should go. And you shouldn't delay. And the Prophet and Umar radiallahu anhu said that if a person is able to go and he doesn't go, then he has died the death of a Yahudi or a Christian. And Allah mentions within the context of Surah Al-Imran, when he is refuting that idea that Allah has a son, the first 60 ayat is a refutation that Allah has a son, because the Nasara from Najran, they came to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ in order to convert and refute and debate with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. Surah Al-Imran was revealed and the Prophet ﷺ refuted them, and then he asked them to engage in mubahala, and they rejected and they went. Just after those passages where Allah is refuting the idea that he has a son, Allah talks about that the Hajj, or the Makkah, the house at Makkah, the ancient house, أول بيت وُدِئَ للناس. Why does Allah mention that after refuting that Allah is the Son? The reason being is because the Jews and the Christians and other religions as well, not specific to them, have a habit of venerating places which don't need to be venerated. They have a habit of going to places which are innovated. They have a habit of seeking tabarruk from things which can't bless them. Whereas this ummah, they don't believe that Allah has a son, believe in the house that was placed as a symbol of Tawheed. And this is why making Hajj is very important. This is why we're talking about ability. Because if you are able, do not delay. As Umar radiallahu anhu said, if you delay whilst you are able, then you die the death of a Yahudi or a Nasrani. And what we can learn from this also is that the objective of the Hajj is that it is one of those acts of worship which combines the body and the wealth. And you will be hard pressed to find another act of worship which has all of this. The Hajj tells you to combine your wealth and your health and everything that you own, your family, leave it. Or take them with you. Your house, leave it. Your body, your wealth, strive with all of that, all of your might and everything that you've got for the sake of Allah to fulfill this obligation of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And from this we can learn, from the objective of the Hajj, is that Islam wants you to benefit in what you have been given in the dunya. Your health, your wealth, your family. The point is that you don't enjoy them or just enjoy them. The point is that you benefit from them. From the objective of the Hajj is that it teaches us how to use our body and how to use our wealth. So a person could have 5 grand in his account and you might think, nice car or Hajj. Holiday, body, with my family, or Hajj. On page 34, the Shaykh then carries on talking about different ahkam which come from the definition of ability. And we've just talked about how the Malikis would say that you have to find someone to take your place if you are bodily enabled, if you are physically enabled. So if you are ill, then you need to look for somebody else and they will take your place for you. Whereas others have said that no, you need to wait for finances. But now we have a point, which is that if I was to do Hajj on somebody else's behalf, if I was to do Hajj on somebody else's behalf, who will get the reward? So if Ibrahim says to me, I can't do Hajj, may Allah preserve, I can't do Hajj and I don't think I'll ever be able to do Hajj physically. But here's £5,000, go do Hajj on my behalf. Who's going to get the reward, him or me? Of course there's ikhtilaf. Jazakallah khair. There's ikhtilaf between the ulama, but the ulama, the correct opinion, that the Shaykh is saying here, is that you will both get the reward from the karam and the rahmah of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Now, obviously this is if he fulfills certain conditions, that he has ikhlas and he does things properly. And if he does do those things properly, he will share in the reward for the person that's doing it. Now, before we move on to the next subtitle, chapter sort of thing, some of the rulings connected for having a person taking your place, which is a proxy, people often refer to, or an agent, who pays for the expenses? So if Ibrahim says, now I can't do the Hajj, but I've got some money, can he say to me, can you top it up and then you go and do the Hajj on my behalf? Or you pay for the whole thing? The ulama have said that if you wanted to do that, of course you can do that. But the expenses fall upon the person who the obligation is upon. This now stems from that khilaf that we were just talking about. The Maliki say it has to be physical. But Ahmad and Shafi'i said that if he's got the money and he thinks realistically that physically he's not going to be able to go for Hajj or Umrah, but he knows somebody that can take his place, he must give him that money and say, listen, free your calendar up if you can, or I'll find somebody else, and you go and do the Hajj, here's the money. So the expenses are upon him. If he says to him now, the instructions are, you go make the tamattu kind of Hajj, who do the expenses fall upon for the hadi, for the slaughter and the sacrifice? Is it upon the proxy or is it upon him? Because the proxy is going to go there and he's going to find the sheep, isn't he? He's going to have to go there and he has to pay the person, the butcher, etc. Or is it upon the haji? The ulama have said that it is upon the haji, because it is his hajj. But he will get rewarded for looking for it and he will get the reward for it. The third mas'ala, which is, if he goes on his behalf and he does something wrong, who pays for the expiation? The proxy, the agent, or the haji? Does he ring him up and say, mate, I need £100 please. I've done something wrong on your behalf. Islam. The correct opinion on this, which is that if he has been instructed, then it goes to the haji, because he's told him to do that. But, and if he didn't know that is, but if it was a mistake on his own part, then he must pay for the fidya for himself. If he's done something himself which is wrong, so for example he wore something which was stitched, did the haji tell him to do that? No, he's made that mistake for himself, so he has to pay the fidya for himself. But if the haji has told him to do something, and then later on the proxy finds out that, oh no, I've done something wrong now, and you told me to do it that way, he's following the instructions. Is it permissible to have two proxies, one to do Umrah and one to do Hajj? So he has £5,000. I'll give you £3,000, you go do the Hajj, and you, £2,000, you go do Umrah on my behalf. Can he pick two different people? The ulama have said that that is permissible. Is it permissible for Ibrahim to say, now listen, can you do the Hajj on my behalf? Yeah, but I'm going to skip a month's work. I'm going to miss out on a lot of money. You need to pay me some money. I'll do it, but I want a salary for it. Is that allowed? Yeah? What's the dalil? The Malikis and the Shafi'is have said that it is allowed. Because if you can take a payment to teach, if you can take a payment to teach people the Quran, if you can take a payment to be the Imam or the Mu'adhin, then you can take a payment to be a proxy. The Hanbalis and the Hanafis said, no, you're not allowed to do that. If you want to be a proxy, you go in for the sake of the reward for yourself and the reward for that other person. But what seems to be the correct opinion, bi'idhnillah, is the opinion of the Malikis and the Shafi'is. If there is a need for him to take that, then he is allowed to do so. And this is the opinion that the Shaykh mentions is the correct one on page 36. The last thing about the proxies here, okay, that's it. Page 36. The Shaykh now moves on to talk about ability for one last condition. So now we've had Islam, intellect and sanity, financial ability, 3. The fourth one, what was the fourth one? Being free. Okay, so that's a good one, I missed that one. Fourth one is that he is free, or the third one that is free. The fifth condition is that a woman must have a mahram. A woman must have a mahram. If she doesn't have a mahram, and she has physical ability and she has financial ability, even if it's for 20 years, is the Hajj wajib upon her? No. The Hajj is not, she can't go because she doesn't have a mahram. And this is the opinion of the majority of the ulama, except the Shafi'is. And the Shafi'is have said that a woman, if she's able to go, and she's financially able, and she doesn't have a mahram, she still must go, even without the mahram. The dalil that the Shafi'is said. Number 1, the Hajj cannot be prevented by anyone, not even her husband, because this is a wajib upon Allah. Number 2, the husband cannot prevent the woman from going to the houses of Allah. So how about Masjid al-Haram? Point number 3, they've said that if there is a group of women and she's going to be safe, then the maqsad of a woman travelling in safety is going to be fulfilled. So the whole reason why the Prophet ﷺ said that a woman must have a mahram is that she will be safe, etc. And in this scenario, there's a large group of people that are going. It's not like normal safar. If a woman wants to go from here to Manchester, it's going to be hard for her to find a group of people that are going to Manchester. But if there's 100 people going from here to Manchester, it becomes easier for her to make that travel, and therefore she can go. So the Shafi'is have said that the reason for the woman having a mahram has been fulfilled. But the majority of the ulama have said that this is not the correct opinion. The majority of the ulama have said, and the dalil is with them. And there's one specific dalil, I'm sure you know of this hadith, and the Shaykh makes mention of it on page 36 towards the bottom. That a man, he came out on an expedition, and the woman, his wife, went on Hajj. And the Prophet ﷺ said that no woman is allowed to make any travel without a mahram. So the man put his hand up, he said, I'm going on such and such expedition, my wife is going on Hajj. So the Prophet ﷺ said, leave the expedition and go perform Hajj with your wife. So what we can learn with this is that the Prophet ﷺ made excuses for a person not to go on an expedition, even though once you have put your name for it, you have to go. And what we have learned from this also, the Prophet ﷺ corrected something which was wrong, which is that women are not allowed to travel without a mahram. And this has become a fitna today, which is now women are freely travelling today without a mahram. And they will travel for work, they will travel for pleasure, they will travel for socializing, and it's not become even a thing that is being mentioned anymore. It's become something that people do all the time without even anybody even saying anything anymore. This is a huge fitna. And the Prophet ﷺ said that there is no woman who believes in Allah and the last day except that she will make safar with having a mahram. It is something which is extremely important, where I feel that the Muslims have become relaxed in. Wallahu musta'an. We'll continue with chapter 2 after Salatul